We have to stop Ronan.
How?
I have a plan.
You've got a plan.
Yes.
First of all, you're copying me from when I said I had a plan.
I'm not. People say that all the time. It's not that unique of a thing to say.
Secondly, I don't even believe you have a plan.
I have part of a plan.
What percentage of a plan do you have?
You don't get to ask questions after the nonsense you pulled on Nowhere.
I just saved Quill.
We've already established that you destroying the ship that I'm on is not saving me.
When did we establish?
Like 3 seconds ago!
No, I wasn't listening. I was thinking of something else.
Oh.
She's right. You don't get an opinion. What percentage?
I don't know. 12%.
12%?
That's a fake laugh.
It's real!
Totally fake.
That is the most real, authentic, hysterical laugh of my entire life because that is not a plan.
Do you expect me to talk?
Hello and welcome to episode 130 of Do You Expect Us to Talk? I'm your host Becca, and as always joined by my fellow Ravagers, Chris and Dave. How are you both?
Good evening, folks.
I am Groot.
Language? Your language, young man.
We are Groot.
I speak Groot, and that was filth.
Can you dance?
I am Groot.
Yeah.
That's all he's going to say throughout the...
I haven't heard that sort of language about Norman Lamont since Michael
Since he was in the
Barrymore
cabinet.
at the Comedy Awards a few years ago.
No, there wasn't that Julian Clary.
No,
Yeah, it probably was,
Julian
actually.
Clary said it, and then Michael Barrymore later did a mime to represent
All
it.
right, okay.
God.
Okay.
Cringe.
Fucking hilarious.
So Bill Cosby last week, this week Michael Barrymore. Anyway, on we go.
Oh dear. Anyway, as if you haven't guessed, this time we are getting around to reviewing Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 1, starring Chris Pratt, Vin Diesel, Zoe Saldana, Bradley Cooper, Dave Bautista, Karen Gillan, Glenn Close, Benicio del Toro, and many more. Score by Tyler Bates, the script by James Gunn and Nicole Perlman, and also directed by James Gunn, and released in 2014.
You said that really surprised. You're like, oh, it's even directed by James Gunn.
He had a go at doing that as well.
I did as well. I didn't mean to
That's-
sound
that's
so
a
I
big
know
one.
he directed it, and I didn't. It just came out like that because it's.
I'm Ron Burgundy.
Go for yourself, San Diego.
Do you know what? We recorded our Winter Soldier podcast, and then we finished it, and I listened to it back, and my sound settings were all wrong. We'd forgotten our format, and we're chatting offline going, Christ, there was some ring rust there, wasn't there? And then we went and did, like, Creed, and it was like, oh, we're back. We've remembered how to do it. That sounds great. A bit of a false dawn, that, wasn't it?
We got there in the end. So, but yeah, no, blame me and my lack of interwebs for the hiatus there. But thanks for bearing with us.
Yeah, we're all over it now. Don't worry about that.
Yeah.
There wasn't this film was interesting in build-up because I just don't think anyone could believe that they were like going for this. The knowledge of this intellectual property wasn't very broad across the population, was it?
No, but I think at this point Marvel had built like enough success to go in at Maybe when they greenlit it, it was still a bit of a should we say risk, but I think by the time it was due out, you already had like, you know, Avengers, Thor did well, Winter Soldier did really well. I think, you know, I don't think there was much to go wrong here. I mean, what I kept thinking was it was a decent enough amount of risk because if this completely fails, you can just move on and just not do another one. It wasn't like this is going to tank the franchise, because I think there's enough wiggle room. You can go like, oh, okay, we can just sort of maneuver around that and carry on. If you know what I mean. So I was never really that concerned.
Yeah, even if you look at the plot of this film, the Infinity Stone that is represented in this film as the Power Stone, and I believe that's the one Thanos has either already. I think that's the one he's already got.
Yeah.
At the start of the film, so at the start of Infinity War. So, in some respects, if you'd never followed this up, he could have just gone and got that before the event. So yeah, I suppose. But I just thought there was an element of not trolling, but just a complete lack of fear that they go, "What should we do next? Guardians of the Galaxy." And then who should we cast in it? How about that fat bloke from that TV show? Who else? A wrestler?
It does seem a bit like thrown together, doesn't it?
Well, let's have some strong side characters then. Okay, what should we get? Vin Diesel. Who will he play?
That lady from Star Trek.
A tree. Quite a lot of risk in this. And we must have Henry, portrait of serial killer, in it.
That's a big risk, for sure.
And the guy that made that really, really, weird Kick-Ass rip-off. Well, not rip-off, because it was made before Kick-Ass, but... Do you know what I mean? Like, sort of really, did those really obscure, like, crazy, gory horror films. Let's get him to do it.
Yeah, I mean, the first thing he cut was, the first thing he wrote was Scooby-Doo, the 2002, is it Sarah Michelle Gellar, wasn't it, film?
I did not know that. I did not know that.
Yeah, no, I was reading on him today. I was like, what's he done? Because I wanted to see, what have I seen? Because a friend of mine used to talk about Slither quite a lot. He said, I was really confident for Guardians because I really liked Slither. And I haven't seen Slither. So I thought, well, what else has he written? What might have I seen? And he'd written the 2 Scooby-Doo films and and Super. And there were a couple of other things as well. But those are the things that sort of stuck out to me. So, yeah, Super, which was kind of like a homemade sort of superhero, somebody trying to be sort of a homemade version of a superhero 3 or 4 years before Kick-Ass came along, yeah.
But Marvel, in terms of the casting and the choices, they always tend to sort of pick not necessarily like the most well-established people because they are usually well within the budgets. They don't go for like highest grossing stars, or say they would like get like a Chris Pratt, and they say, well, there's potential there. So yeah, okay, he's chubby, we can get him in shape, but he has a natural comedic likability to him.
I'm only talking on paper. Chris Pratt is not a problem at all, is it?
Oh yeah, no.
But
because he ended up losing more weight for the film, so I think they asked him to drop 50 and he lost 60. So but anyway, no, I think he's like the everyman, shall we say?
Yeah, but it's kind of like the you look at the characters and you think, okay, well, what do we need and what will work well? But the idea of doing it in space is kind of like. Is doing like a space film. It makes sense because when you have like an up and coming villain like Thanos and the Infinity Stones, it makes sense to kind of like have a series or a film that's set in that universe just beforehand, just to get a bit more cohesive sort of feel, so it doesn't feel as jarring. And
if his plan is going to be to wipe out half of the universe, putting everything around North America might be a bit.
Yeah, well, let's introduce the universe.
But yeah, I knew nothing about James Gunn. I had to sort of, I'd heard of Tropy with Juliet, but not seen it. I'd heard of Slither, but not seen it. I know he wrote the 2 Scooby-Doo films, which, again, I don't think I ever saw because, well, why would I particularly? I don't know if they're good. I don't know if they're like fun and subversive or whether they are just pretty lame family films. I've no idea at all. I didn't know either. He had been married to Jenna Fisher from the American version of The Office, Pam, who was the equivalent of Dawn in the British version, who ended up with John Krasinski's character, Jim. So, yeah, reading up on this guy, I wasn't reading anything that I recognised. I knew so little about him. We all know a bit more now, but there you go.
Yeah, he was still like relatively newish, kind of exciting. I suppose, like, say, like, film nerds or, film Twitter would be kind of well versed about who he was because there's films like Slither, and Super, but yeah, so for that it might be this is like excitement for the average cinema goer. No one's going to
know. Yeah, but then I don't think the average. I mean, even cinema goers that have some interest in the mechanics of film, the directors are not the above the line thing, are they? With Marvel. They've gone through it. Joss Whedon to a degree because he kind of seemed to be almost a creative voice for the entire series through sort of phase 2. I think the Russos are obviously bigger than most of what they've had by now in terms of the amount of creative input they probably have. But Marvel, the cinematic universe belongs to Kevin Feige and his associates, so in some respects it wouldn't have bothered me either way. You know, they said, oh, James Gunn's going to do that. Who's that? I probably looked him up at the time. Some of the things I've said today that like I've looked up, I probably have forgotten that I read 3 or 4 years ago. But, you know, I would have looked him up and gone, yeah, whatever. Particularly after The Winter Soldier, because do remember, of course, that they were best known for You, Me and Dupree, which was not only a comedy, but a really poor comedy as well. So by now, I think we were getting to the point where it was trust in Marvel. You know, when they pick someone, you go, I'm not sure about that. And you go, well, the Russos, fair enough. And there's so much in this film that is, I think, director-led. There are so many things you could strip out because they're just stylistic choices. The whole awesome mix stuff and slight 80s vibe to it and that probably would not have been there with another director. Again, we don't read the comics, so maybe that is a sort of point in them. I don't know. Certainly, if we take the current timeline, I imagine that character was taken from Earth around the same time. But yeah, the whole, you know, the film opens with 10cc. Yeah. I'm not in love, which is just not something you would ever expect to hear. I think this episode might start with it as well. I don't know, it's ages since I cut the intro. The funny thing is, when we're recording these, listeners, the bit at the very start of the show, you hear before us. We're recording this before we go to edit it and find out what the hell I cut together like months ago. But yeah, I think it's 10cc.
Sometimes it's what YouTube allows, isn't it?
It is, yeah, that's the other thing. YouTube didn't, yeah. Some of our earlier episodes, I started cutting out the intros, but I put them through now. We normally get a little heads up warning, which is just we're not going to affect your standing, and we're not going to block it, but that is copyrighted. And then the worst she gets, like an advert on the stuff. It's not too much of a problem. But yeah, all of those sort of stylistic things that came with the film, you do feel the director's stamp on him. And I really don't want to go into the whole Twitter thing, but everything about James Gunn has a hint of sort of subversion and left field thinking to it. And so it doesn't actually surprise me that, and he did have some sort of musical background himself as well. So I would imagine music would be important to him when he goes to put the film together. Plus, he was born in the 60s, so he would have been in his teens in the 80s. So a lot of that music probably did speak to him anyhow.
Well, a lot of it is kind of is more 70s-esque, isn't it?
I was just about to say that, actually.
Yeah, sort of 70s and 80s.
Yes, actually, you're probably right. 10cc is for a start. So, yeah. But yes, as a young child, a lot of this music was still coming out. Music from around the time he was about 11 or 12 then, maybe.
Yeah, but sort of, I think it's kind of that weird kind of music you listen to if you're a kid in the 80s feeling a bit nostalgic.
Yeah, it's not even. I find that now the music you listen to. I'm not the most nostalgic person in the world, but we were just talking about a bit. I won't go into what it was, but we were talking before we were recording about something I watched today out of pure nostalgia. And when I listen to music from those eras, it isn't always the music I liked at the time. It's the music that defines the era. So you do find that as well. That like I didn't particularly like Oasis at the time, but if I want reminding of the mid-90s. They are that era. Yeah. So there's some of that to it. So I mean, in terms of production, I mean, the taps were being turned on. This had a sort of budget around the 200 million mark, but you know, James Gunn wrote it. They seem to give quite a lot of leverage to one man here, which is brave, given what this is. Unless they were genuinely. Well, we think all our films are going to do like 3 times that budget now, so we'll take a risk.
Could be, and I think also when you have like a film that's a bit out there as well, you're a bit more like, oh well, it's like I said, it's like, well, if it doesn't work, then you can go, all right, well, we'll just move on. But with a film that's a bit out there, it's probably worth, okay, well, fuck it, we might as well just go all in. Let's trust the guy. Just, let's just like, we won't sort of micromanage too much. We'll just sort of go, well, okay, well,
Yeah.
It seems to work, so whatever.
Yeah. I'm trying to look at when Yeah, I mean, it was first mentioned. This is Wikipedia, so anyone listening could pick this up quite easily. It was first mentioned as a potential film at 2010 at San Diego Comic Con by Feige. I suspect that might have been the Avengers panel. So obviously there would have been conversations of, this is the end of Phase 1. Where might you go next? So I suppose in some respects it's luck that this came out in 2014 as opposed to 15 or 16 or cramming it out in time for 13. But it did leave 2014 a very distinctive year with two very different films in Marvel's history, and probably I would suggest their best year so far.
It's probably arguably two of their best films, isn't it, when in that same year?
Yeah, I'd probably agree with that for sure. Definitely a standout year for them.
I mean, it's definitely top tier, isn't it? I think if you look at like the current rankings, these two are consistently top 10.
Yeah, it'll rank quite highly for me.
Yeah, if not top 5 or something. I don't know. Don't know.
For sure.
Yeah.
I'm just going to look at my rankings just quickly to see if I agree with that currently. Hang on a minute. Let's just see where I've got it. I'm not going to reveal it, but I'm just going to see.
Oh.
Yeah. It's fairly up there. Yes. It's funny because people did gravitate much more from one to the other. I think you'd be hard pushed to find people at the time who like Marvel that didn't hugely enjoy both.
Yeah.
I think they were top tier, but there was a sort of strong divide over whether people preferred this or Winter Soldier of the two released this year. I mean, I don't know if we all have, but I've certainly got a friend on Facebook who went to see this 22 times.
I believe I went and saw. Is it the same person we're thinking of?
Yeah, and he got like presented with like a home copy of it, and I think Cineworld presented him a copy, and I think
I think we know who that is.
I'll be honest. I think that was my fault as well because he saw it so many. Yeah, he saw it. Well, he saw it so many times. I think he saw it something like 13 times or something like that. He just saw it like, and I just went, "Well, why don't you go 20?" He was like, "All right, fuck it, yeah."
So Chris, that's your fault.
And a bit late, I was there when he saw it on that 20th time or whatever it was. I actually sort of joined him for that. So he sat and watched. So yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I'm as keen on film as anyone, but there are very few films that I would want to watch that many times in that truncated a period. I mean, I've got another friend who went and saw Deadpool a similar number of times, Deadpool 2. Actually, one of the writers at Set the Tape. So, he went to see it. I don't know if he saw it theatrically 30 times, but he's seen it upwards of 30 times now. And I'm thinking, I struggled through it once after the first one. I like Deadpool, but like the joke was done and dusted by the time we got to a sequel. I can't imagine sitting and finding anything in that 30 times.
Well, it almost ruins it a little bit when you're trying to rewatch something over and over again. It kind of makes it a bit tired, regardless of how good it is, how good a film can be. You still get a bit tired of it, but some people can.
There are films I've seen that many times in my life, but not in like 10 weeks or something.
Yeah.
But there you go. So yeah, Guardians really did sort of attract an awful lot of devotion, love. People really, really enjoyed it. For me, as a first watch, I really, really enjoyed it. This might be the most pure fun film of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And when it is actually having to do the heavy lifting of some of the Infinity Stones and setting up a universe, it's brave. From the very first scene, there were a lot of allusions to it being potentially like a new Star Wars. In that we've had that for years until Star Wars came back. You had it with Harry Potter, you had it with Tolkien, and it was just like that mixture of fun and fantasy and good casting. And there is a little bit of sort of Harrison Ford about Chris Pratt. There is. They're not exactly the same. He's a lot goofier than Harrison Ford, but there are some similarities. The opening sequence has a little bit of Raiders about it.
Yeah.
Certainly in what it's trying to do.
Plus, also, you think about the overarching team as well. You have like you've kind of got not essentially a princess, but basically sort of like a headstrong kind of female co-lead. You've got like a wide-eyed, he's kind of childish, but he is like a youngish kind of guy seeking adventure. You have like a rapscallion and his big furry or tree friend. It's them kind of stereotypes just jingled about a little bit. You can kind of
and also he's just the making it up as you're going along.
Yeah.
And the I mean it repeats
learning to
a bit.
trust each other kind of thing. It's like
Yeah. But again, I just went through it. We're introduced to a talking raccoon, which on the big screen wasn't the best CG I've ever seen. It was decent. It's not that it's really bad, but it isn't as refined as some you would see. And I just thought this was incredibly brave all the way through, and it had me, and it took the chance to do some heavy lifting. We knew Thanos was going to be a thing, and he's in this. Introduced us to some new concepts like the Kree, which obviously we're going to see again in Captain Marvel in a few months' time. They did get some names. I know they're not the biggest spenders in the world, but Bradley Cooper is the voice of Rocket and stuff like that, which to this day I don't really recognise as his voice.
No, I think he does really well, really embedding himself into the role.
Yeah,
you can't even look at his Cooper's filmography and you think, oh yeah, he was Rocket Raccoon, and
John
C. Reilly in a relatively small role, Glenn Close,
Peter
Serafinowicz.
Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah.
His name I still can't pronounce. Apologies. But yeah, Glenn Close. I know,
Yeah, what is it with you? Every single time you pronounce a name perfectly and then profusely apologise.
Well, I can't. I struggle.
You just did.
I
You
struggle.
got it right.
But no, I think
Peter Sticks ugly. Even there you are.
That's the one. But because of like the
Edward
ragtag
Snowden.
nature of the characters as well, I think that it's quite interesting that you do have these kind of, I don't know, big names, in a film that you wouldn't necessarily see them all together.
Yeah. So yeah, it's quite eclectic casting. It's extremely good casting, and it's just fun from the very first scene. I've never been the biggest fan of the sort of aesthetic of the film. In the Xandar stuff. Look, Xandar, is it the main planet? Xandar, yeah.
Xandar.
That looks great. But once you start putting in really fake-looking skies, obviously because it's on a different world and different in space. I understand why it's like that, but obviously the whole thing does look created in a computer. So I always enjoy the look of like a Winter Soldier a lot more. But it was just fun from the very first scene, and it just kept introducing us to characters, and I'm thinking, how's this going to go? And then we're nearly 30 minutes in. And in shot is Dave Bautista, and I'm thinking, right, it's that wrestler guy. How bad's this going to be? And he's fucking brilliant, and that's not usual. It just isn't, I know we've got a few ex-wrestlers acting these days, but the vast majority of them aren't good and don't make it. And comedy isn't always their strongest suit. Dwayne Johnson being, a certainly not typical, in that he's very good at sort of like comedy. So yeah, everything they introduced to us and all the concepts they were introducing to us were just great fun all the way through. And I just came out thinking, well, it's a very different beast from the Winter Soldier. It's clearly the sort of second of the two films this year. I can't put it quite on that plane, but why judge it on that plane? If you took the Marvel logo off it, they're two extremely different films, and they nailed it. It's one of the best things they've ever done, and they could go on making these films forever, and they really could. I mean, they may not be able to now for reasons that are obvious and we don't really need to go into, and we can maybe talk a little bit more when we get to Guardians 2, because we will be able to discuss an actual example of them trying to like expand things and move it on and what we thought of that. But there was no doubt when we got to Infinity War, when the Guardians appeared, big smile on my face immediately. It was like the music kicked in and it was like, oh, it's the Guardians. Fantastic. Big smile. They dropped Hemsworth in with them, who's fantastic at light comedy anyway. So the goodwill that was generated by this film was phenomenal. So yeah, my opening thoughts is absolutely one of the best things Marvel have ever done, and I had a really great time with this today.
Yeah, so did I. Becca, what do you think?
No, I would totally agree with all the above, really. I say I would rank this, when we come to ranking the final, MCU so far, it will rank quite highly. Top 5, if not top 10. But yeah, I think, even though I've kind of not read many, if any, of Marvel comics, I would say I was a complete sort of newcomer to this. I'd not heard of this property before. I wasn't even aware of this newer version, let alone, the 1969 sort of original Groot that is alluded to in the sequel, I think, at the end of the sequel. And the cast, I was like, Vin Diesel, Bradley Cooper, Zoe Saldana, you wouldn't expect them to, see them in the film together.
I mean, that was incredibly prescient in 1969 that they thought to put Rocky and Whale in together.
That was amazing. Literally at the end of that, I was like,
I mean, how did
God,
they even think of that?
I'm Marcel Wallace as well.
Yes.
Yeah, definitely Marcel Wallace. So we've got the Pulp Fiction, we've got the Bond, obviously we've got Dave Bautista as well.
I really thought you were going with Dev Patel then.
he might appear in there. He's maybe the Dragon Ball connection.
Which is awful, by the way. If anyone...
That's stretching it out.
So sorry, Becca, you were saying.
No, that's fine. That's a terrible film. Avoid. Even if you're a Dragon Ball fan. No.
Though it does have the comedic use of the word bender, so...
Well, yeah, that's true.
From the moment you were born, I always knew you were a bender. Anyway, sorry, Becca, to continue.
Oh dear, that's what. I'd like to do. Going off on a tangent, I would like to do a separate stream about why the recent spate of anime live action movies are so poor. But that's for another day. But yeah, no, I enjoyed this film upon release. I had so much fun with it. Had a really good time watching it for this podcast. Love all the Easter eggs and all the little character cameos as well. James Gunn has done a fantastic job. I know he took a real risk, and the studio also took a real risk on him to bring this to the screen. But I had a really great time, and looking forward to the sequel. And it's really interesting how, especially with this film as well, they do quite a lot of world building and setup for for Thanos the big bad, but they do that without being detrimental to the film.
It doesn't feel like a...
No, it doesn't feel like that. They're putting too much onus on.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, it's there. You can tell it's for a future film, but it's serving this film too. Exactly,
and it feels totally natural as well. You don't kind of feel like you're just being shoved, served up this load of backstory just for no reason.
And I like the fact Josh Brolin had that much plastic surgery done to portray the character so accurately.
This is it, definitely, and the score as well. I mean, obviously the score is fantastic, but the song choices as well. We were talking earlier about kind of James Gunn kind of growing up with that kind of era of music. I think it's more to do also with Peter Quill as well, because he was obviously a child of the 70s and 80s, obviously being quite young in 1988. It's kind of music that he would have grown up with, and it kind of ties back to him and sort of memories that he would have had growing up as a young boy. So it's all tied into his character as well, and it keeps us grounded as well, because he is Terran. He's an Earthman, so he's like the everyman that we go on the journey.
I thought you meant James Gunn.
Oh no, yeah, well, a bit both, and also
they haven't let a tree direct any of this yet.
Directed by I am Groot.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree with all the above really. It's good fun. I have really good fun with it. There's Doctor Who reference in there with Karen Gillan as well. All the geeky films coming together.
It's pretty airtight as a film. I got from watching this. It seems to have set up, has all its themes. Everything has a payoff. It does everything kind of just wraps up everything kind of nicely for me. This time, I don't know what you guys thought. It was always as close to say Iron Man in terms of reaching that perfect film status.
Oh, I completely agree. I think when we go through, I mean, the film feels kind of short. And it isn't, but it's just because everything is just servicing the story, so it's just whipping through quite quickly.
But, you got quite a long end sequence. I think end sequence it's at least 30 minutes.
Yeah, and I'm not in love with that, and that's probably why it feels short, because I ignored the last third.
Yeah.
But but that's me and stuff that anyone who's listened to this show knows about me. But this, when I think of Marvel, is actually one of the worst examples. But I'll come to it in a bit. It wasn't as bad today, because there were, and I'll come to why when we get to it. But I just found that even things like the comedy is while they're advancing plot. So if you think of the escape from the prison, a lot of the comedy is literally them starting the whole process of escaping and so on. So yeah, they didn't sit round and have a lot of conversations about life with a load of sort of shit talking each other. They didn't. They got on with it.
Yeah. Well, yeah, so it's either that or advancing character. So everything in there advances character or plot. It's one of the two, and it just tells you something about it. Makes it a bit more richer. So yeah, it's really, really well meticulously thought out, this film.
Absolutely. With that, shall we discuss this film sequentially?
Why not? So, I'm going to say something. If I had any criticisms, it's really Marvel in general now. This is the first time where they start fucking around with the Marvel logo.
Yeah, they change it a little bit, don't they, now?
Actually, I thought we were on the original one here. What did they do to it?
Well,
because it was the original. It was that kind of Thor: The Dark World music, wasn't it?
I think it still had the. I don't know if you started the flipping pages or not. I can't remember now, but it was but it was the first time where it wasn't directly at the front. It was almost like post credits, and then you had the Marvel logo. Sorry,
yes. So the logo's the same, but it's placement of it.
Yeah.
They frequently have a cold open now.
And I disagree. I think it kind of just cuts the film. It's not like, say, Bond, where you had you have your gun barrel, you have your opening bit, and then transition to a title sequence. It's different. It's transition. It feels a lot more natural. I think the title just kind of stops it kind of cold open. It's like it, and every time I see it, I just think how much more smoother would it be if you just, rather than. Like, it begins with the sort of the 10cc song. How nice it would be if you saw the Marvel logo with the 10cc song playing over it, and then after it finished, you cut straight to him holding the.
I kind of agree with that, but I have to say the logo, and I'll explain when we get to the film. I've mentioned it in previous shows, and I think these two know which film it is. I cried over the fucking logo in one of the films, so it can't be that bad. Because it still managed to move me despite the placement being wrong. Because I know that was a cold open, that film. I don't know. The only problem I've got with the logo is I like the feeling of, we see the Marvel logo and it's very comic booky, and then we go into a live action film that is the comic books brought to life.
Yeah.
I don't want it with shots of the movie version of the Hulk and Iron Man in it. So I hate the current logo.
The newer one, yeah. Because it's just so big, bombastic as well, and full of its own self-importance, which fair enough they've earned, but you kind of think, but no, if you're gonna do it, have that at the front, have it as your this is our studios, and then do the film. Do you know what I mean? So
yeah, okay. So we started earlier in the sequential than I was expecting.
We're going really sequential.
We've gone back to the 80s.
So yeah, and that bit where Mark Strong tells you to switch your phone off and stuff. Okay.
For people who don't go to View, won't know what the fuck that means, but okay.
Yeah, no. That's the only one we got at the moment. City World opens in a few months, but anyway.
You can play the Mark Strong book game, but it doesn't really
it's only the fact,
apply to this.
It's only the fact that if you go to the cinema a lot, you have to sit through this stuff constantly, and it does my fucking head in. But there you go. I was thinking, when we got to this opening scene, I was just thinking of our comments last week on casting people that look nothing like either their parents or their elder counterpart. Because we were saying how much, if you haven't listened to Creed and you're just listening to the Marvel films, we were talking about how at the end of that film, you see Rocky's grandson, and he is reminiscent at least of Talia Shire. Because in the film, Rocky says he looks like Adrian. And he does. And we were making the point that they throw that dialogue into film after film where the person they're referencing looks nothing like whoever they're saying. This kid looks fuck all like anyone that would ever grow into Chris Pratt. And that distracted me today, probably because we didn't record Creed very long ago.
You know, I've never thought of it, because I think I've just kind of gone like, oh right, yeah, that's a Money Young fan. I don't give it much thought. I'm just like, okay, right. Unless it looks like, oh my god, that's really good casting. You look really like a young so and so. I don't really give it any much thought.
So we start in 1988. It's 10cc, and it's Peter Quill. I don't know if we get his name at this point. We probably just get Peter, I'd have thought. His mother is dying clearly of cancer in a hospital bed. He's called in to see her. She basically dies while they're talking. He's given a present from her that he'll open later in the film as an adult. We'll come to that.
He didn't sort of... It was one of the... As she died, she asked for him to he didn't want to do it because supposedly because he was too scared to kind of like, I don't want to touch your hand because that'll be it almost. And then she died, and you just feel fucking terrible as you would, because it's quite a fucking heartrending scene.
So as we say, the lightest film in the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Yeah, it's kind of alternately really heavy and then quite but it's a good balance. I think the kind of the darker and lighter tones are balanced.
Well, light doesn't have to be weightless, does it?
No, but it can be uplifting.
It does. Yeah, he runs out and he's immediately clearly abducted sort of by a UFO. And we immediately cut to 26 years later. And that's really all you got to say on the opening scene. The film, as Chris saying, is really tight. Gets the information it needs to across quite quickly.
It does. It's quite brisk, isn't it? And it's kind of, there's very little fat in this film.
Yeah, and then we're into the Raiders opening sequence.
Very little gym in these meeting these gym mats. Yeah, it's a bit Raiders, isn't it?
I think that's deliberate. Don't you?
I reckon so.
Partly, yeah. I mean, he is kind of... what is he? What's he actually doing? He's trying to get, like, the...
He's trying to steal an orb.
Yes. And not the idol.
Yeah, and he's attacked by Jimon Hinzao. I never know how to pronounce his name.
Dijon Mustard.
Dijon Mustard attacks him and gets right up his nose. This guy...
He's a bit of a veteran, isn't he? So it's good to see him appear on screen. And he gives in, like, a really intense performance here.
He has done a few of these roles where he's played sort of secondary villain or henchman in, like, crap films. The Island springs to mind, actually. I think that was the one I was thinking of, because I thought I saw him and thought, oh god, they've cast him in that sort of role. If they've taken anything from The Island, it will be terrible.
I saw a
actually, when you
Russian version of that by accident.
When you look through his filmography, there's some really good stuff in there, like Blood Diamond and stuff, but there's an awful lot of dreadful stuff. He was in
Blood Diamond was a good film.
He was in Lara Croft Tomb Raider, The Cradle of Life.
Cradle of Filth.
In Aragon. What else?
Read the book, it's better.
Can't be any worse, could it? He was in King Arthur, Legend of the Sword, which was awful. But there's loads of really pretty decent stuff in there as well. We'll have to see how Aquaman turns out, but he's in that.
That's a good review so far. Well, very early.
Early buzz is
previews.
Good, but
Promising.
It'll be released a couple of days before this episode is out, so we'll see actual reviews by then. So we'll know for certain what the critical reaction is anyway. He was in How to Train Your Dragon 2, obviously just as a voice because it's animated, but that was pretty good. So
Those are good films.
But yeah, I think it's the Island and the Lara Croft bit that when I see him, I think, oh my god, what's this going to be? But yeah, he's attacked trying to steal this orb. What else do we really want to say about the scene, if anything?
I think it just sort of introduces his character of where he is. You know, he's there like dancing around, listening to "Come and Get Your Love," which everyone knows to death now, which wasn't heard of by the time this film
just
came
perfect.
out. Yeah.
I mean, this film has reappropriated songs that did belong to other films as well. I mean, it just has. There's a couple of songs in this film. There's one from Reservoir Dogs.
Yeah.
So, Hooked on a Feeling, but it belongs to this film now. Yeah.
Yeah, it used to belong to this and Ally McBeal.
Yeah.
Oh.
It does happen over the years. It's like Across 110th Street doesn't belong to Across 110th Street. It belongs to Jackie Brown, you know? So, yeah, really great choices. Lots of fun. People I know I've got a friend who's got a real soft spot for Chris Pratt, and when she puts this film on, she watches that scene a few times. She just really, really enjoys him goofing off here,
like singing into like Space Rodents.
Yeah, I mean she is attracted to him, but obviously this isn't the scene you'd put on.
This isn't the scene, fella. You know?
Yeah, but this isn't the scene you would put on for what, is it?
Yeah,
but she just likes his persona so much that she really just enjoys him goofing off here.
Yeah.
Which is really cool. So yeah, there's a bit of a mix in his character here, because skipping to the end of the scene, he's got a woman on his craft he's forgotten was there that he likes from the previous night, which is obviously a little bit more sexual than anything we get in Star Wars.
So he's part Indiana Jones, part James Bond, and
he's definitely
part James T. Kirk. Basically.
He's part Han Solo. There's definitely Kirk in there. Never read that in any of the descriptions of it, but there's a little bit of the pop culture James Kirk anyway, not the actual character, because as we discussed during Star Trek, he's not what people think he is. But I've got Wikipedia up as well. Just I'm looking at the odd bit as we go along. Pratt himself referenced Marty McFly as well.
Oh yeah, that's true. So you got all these archetypes.
I'm not quite sure what I can see in that. I mean, the script is tight like Back to the Future, but
I mean, I think it's, in terms of like who his character is, because essentially he is a man-child, and his character is basically fine because he's someone who has basically been taken away to a different world when he was a kid, and theoretically he hasn't really matured the way you would do, because he hasn't had any parenting of some sort. So
he's still like 8 years old, but
yeah,
post puberty with like a sex drive. Yeah.
So yeah, those elements. So I think part of the reason is it's like finding that maturity of growing up within the film. I think that's his whole arc in the series, is growing up. Yeah. But yeah,
I suppose there's an awful lot of sort of Back to the Future where Marty is completely trying to work as he goes along as well. Just like situations where he's being chased and he's like, what the hell's going on? Do you know what I mean? So I suppose there's an element of that as well. And I suppose there's an element of showing a certain side to the rest of the world that isn't you. I mean, it's only in one scene, but, you know, well, there's a couple of times in Back to the Future. In 3, he goes around calling himself Clint Eastwood because he's suddenly in this environment he's seen loads of films on. So, you know, so he goes around calling himself Star-Lord. And it's a running joke in the film that he thinks it's this portentous name, and everyone goes, "Who's that then?" So that's really cool. But
when they call him that right at the end, he's like, "Finally."
Korath is the Jimon Hunsao character. He's working for the Kree, working for Ronan, who's a character that massively underwhelmed me, but we'll get back to that. Quill gets away with the orb, and we hear. We're introduced to Yondu, aren't we?
Yeah, is that Michael Rooker?
Michael Rooker, yeah.
Yeah, he's really good.
Well, I need to check that. I'm going to sort of call him up and just look at his filmography now. Because
he was famous in Cliffhanger there.
Well, Cliffhanger is a film I saw once and vowed never ever again. And then when I look at it, yes, I've seen him pop up in things. Like, I watched JFK not that long ago. Now I'm looking at these lists and I go, oh yeah, I remember. He was in JFK. And I have seen stuff like Sea of Love and Mississippi Burning, and Tombstone. But the first thing I ever... Sorry, which was?
Mississippi Burning.
Mississippi Burning I really liked, but again, I've not seen it in 20 years. But the film I always think of for him is Henry Portrait of a Serial Killer. Have we all seen that?
I have, years ago, but I've seen it.
I could never get through it.
Well,
it's a really interesting study. I think just due to the graphic nature of it, I'm a little bit like, oh.
I think it's almost like, you know, I think it's, if you could like accurately tell what someone who's like that is actually like, this is probably one of the best films that does that.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost, there's a little bit of this in American Psycho, that it's actually just who he is, and there's often no rhyme or reason to what he's doing at all. It's worth seeing though, because it's a big and small performance at the same time.
It's a very short film as well. It's not like
it's a really short film. There's a story I'll tell you offline of how I ended up seeing that, because I ended up with like hundreds of pounds that got cancelled in like cinema video shop fines for that film, and I never rented it, but it's a long story. But I did see it years later. It's a really short film, and it's a big performance and a small performance at the same time. It's quite internalized, but he's got strong, big characteristics as well. So he's a really interesting actor, and actually, in hindsight, perfect casting for this.
Well, he's a regular with Gunn as well, so I think he's been in everything he's done. So
right.
So well, I think, yeah,
they're just kind of rednecks.
Kind of
space rednecks.
Possibly,
yeah. A little bit like that, aren't they?
I think it's just that kind of like space pirates, kind of like, you know, this rabble kind of. Yeah, that I suppose that kind of thing. That, you know, that kind of. Yeah.
What we're seeing here is really informed by the second film. When I watched it today, I was like, "Oh yeah, I can see what Yondu's actually doing here," and we didn't know at the time. And Gunn would know because he wrote both. Yeah, so there's a bounty set on him by Yondu. Yondu basically brought Peter up, but we get through the film that he was used for thieving and that sort of thing. So he's been misbrought up, we believe, and we do get hints he was supposed to deliver him to his father. But again, more on that in the second film. So Yondu's after him, or certainly sending a bounty on him, and Ronan sends Gamora after him. Gamora is Zoe Saldana.
You know from Star Trek.
Yeah, now this is the daughter or adopted daughter of Thanos.
Which we later learn as well. I suppose adopted is generous to a degree.
Yeah. They didn't seem to do the paperwork, did they?
I suppose when you kind of like massacre an entire planet, I don't think it really matters.
When the family were being massacred, he wasn't leaning down to that kid going sign here and initial here.
Yeah, I don't think he was really asking for consent.
No. But he raises him as his daughter. So Gamora is the offspring of Thanos. Not the offspring, that's totally the wrong term, but you get what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
So we believe she's totally in league with Thanos. Ronan looks kind of scary in his way, and Yondu just looks kind of ruthless, like he would just kill you, no problem.
Yeah, he looks really dangerous in this film. I think sort of Ronan he's kind of a sort of very threatening figure. He does cast a very terrifying shadow, I think.
Well, I think he's got a clear edge of like loyal to himself. Like he's like everything he does is self-interest. So he'll have no problem in doing as long as it's like it serves him.
Yeah. Then we go to visibly. I quite like the new stuff. The stuff we go to next, visually rather.
Yeah.
Quill goes to Xandar, which is. I don't know how to describe it, but it's got it's a nice bright sunny planet, isn't it?
Yeah, it's like I suppose it's like California, but
it's very green.
100 years from now,
urban. It's like urban but very green as well. And they're basically trying to. He's going to go and try and sell the orb, basically. So this is what he does. He goes around places stealing things and selling them to get by. So he's kind of a smuggler, kind of. Who does that remind us of? Yeah.
A smuggler in space, you say?
Well, yes. Just like, I can't think right now. Chekhov? I don't know. Yeah. So there's definitely a lot of Han Solo in this. Where did we go for that? Do we go to we don't go to the Collector yet, do we?
Oh no, Collector's right in the middle of the film. No,
he does go into like it's a pawnbroker, really, isn't it, to try and sell it?
Yeah, I mean, although this time we basically get introduced to most of the Guardians. We have Rocket and Groot, and he's like literally just like fishing for bounties. He's literally like sort of.
They get the bounty while they're waiting. Yeah, Groot just drinking from a fountain. And then denying it.
Yeah.
It's like, I saw you do it. One
of those things, it's a bit like watching the Sooty Show or something, in that, like, whatever Groot says, Rocket has to fucking reply to, and most of the time say what he said.
He's mute. Yeah. Apart from going, I am Groot.
Well, it's just the fact that, like, we find out more so in the sequel that I am Groot actually does mean stuff.
Yeah.
Rather than that's all he can say.
That's the language, but then he says, we are Groot.
Yeah, which doesn't make sense if I am Groot says everything. But yeah.
But never mind.
It's the fact that he has to repeat everything. Oh, so-and-so, you say. Yeah.
So
that's kind of cool. Except if he's like swearing or rude, then they just go language or whatever. So that's really cool. So yeah, he's in quite a lot of danger. Gamora's caught up with him. The guy won't buy the orb off him because he's referenced that Ronin's after it.
Yeah.
And Gamora's got a buyer for it as well. So because she admits she's betrayed them as well. Oh no, that's in prison. That's a little bit later on, actually. They end up arrested by John C. Reilly and Peter Serafinowicz, don't they?
They do, yeah. So basically, they have a big sort of tussle, like kind of, which is kind of fun. Yeah, it's kind of fun as we introduced like basically majority of the main characters, and they basically get arrested, and did they get put in? They get put in the prison, but it's meant to be like a corrupt place. They make reference to like, I don't know what's it, because what's it called? Xandar seems like quite a place of legality, should we say?
It seems
Yeah, the kill by comparison is quite
not-
lawless, isn't it, as the prison goes?
not in an oppressive way, but Xandar seems like zero tolerance,
Yeah.
doesn't it? It's a zero tolerance environment. I don't think.
Whereas, like, with the kill, anything goes.
Yeah. Looking at it in design, it's a bit like Red Dwarf 8.
Oh, yeah.
Like a high
It doesn't,
budget
yeah, a little
version
bit
of
like
it.
that.
Yeah. So
I never thought of that before, actually,
Yes,
Dave. Good point.
neither had I before I said it. But he has his music taken from him because he's got basically an old Walkman that he's listening to this music his mother put together for him, the Awesome Mix, which is
I've got
all
a fun
the
fact about that
stuff.
coming up at the end of the show.
Cool. Yeah, they're put in prison, and we meet all of them. We meet Drax.
Yeah.
Drax had his wife and child killed by. Was it killed by Ronan? I think it was.
Yes, it was killed by Ronan. Everyone's after Gamora because of Thanos. Everyone, but it's like the 6 Degrees of Kevin Bacon Thanos. You know, everyone's had someone killed by Thanos.
Yeah.
It's like it's almost if like he doesn't even need to wipe out 50% of the population. Sounds like he's already done it.
Yeah.
But
So they all kind of get together and decide they're going to. And we're introduced to Drax, and Drax is just fantastic.
Yeah.
This whole character who takes everything completely literally. So and so would just go right over your head. No, it would not. I would catch it.
I love the way it's like everything is literal to him.
I
And
can't
it
even
is
think of
basically
a
to him where he's kind of like slicing somebody's throat and he
But-
goes, why would I put my finger into his throat? And it's like, oh.
it's
And then
like,
like in the sequel
no,
we have more fun with that and it's like, yes.
no, it's like we're supposed to. It's a you could slit his throat. It's like I wouldn't slit his throat. I'd cut it off.
I chop his head clean off.
Yeah, but it's just a sign that means I've never heard that.
Yeah. It's little reaction where it's like, come on, you know what this means. You go, yeah, no.
The escape is probably one of the best scenes in the film.
Yeah.
Started by Groot. They're there trying to work out a plan. And Rocket's there saying, so first we've got to get this thing, but we'll have to do it late when no one's around because it will go crazy. Everything will shut down the moment we do it. And in the background, Groot is kind of expanding himself to reach up and just nab it. And it just sets off this chaotic sequence where Rocket says, I need this, and I need this, and I need that guy's leg. And that's just super. It's brilliant, really funny.
It sets off like the trope of like Rocket just likes taking off
Yeah.
limbs.
Yeah, no, he asks for an eye in the next one, doesn't he? I need it. Oh no, I need it. Yeah, so not much more to say there. They get out on that ship, and I think we've got Ronan and Thanos next. And Ronan seems to basically defy Thanos because he's basically got the No, that's not yet, is it? No, it isn't yet.
Well,
Head a little bit.
No, I'm not actually. I'm thinking about when Ronan had the Infinity Stone. He didn't. He meets Thanos first, though, and we're introduced to what's she called?
Gamora.
Not Gamora. Her
Oh.
sister.
Yeah,
Nebula.
Nebula. Yeah.
That's the one I couldn't. Oh,
I've had to look it up.
I was searching for it.
Yeah. Nebula. So
Yeah.
yeah, we're introduced there. On basically in the same environment he was in that little Easter egg at the end of the Avengers. I
Yeah.
think that's where we meet him then. I was thinking of the later scene, but there is that there. Um,
But I can't imagine he'd be very entertained sitting there all day.
There's no telly or nothing, is there? Checking on him and he's watching like
Neighbours.
Neighbours. Anyway.
and then his arms like shoot up in the air because he's got the conundrum. That's just gone over so many listeners' head. All right, they flee to a place.
Daytime TV in the UK, folks.
They go to a place called Nowhere, don't they? This is where they go to meet the Collector. At the same time, they do a bit of gambling and Drax gets pissed. This is where he opens the orb, the Collector, and shows there's an Infinity Stone inside, and we get another explanation for anyone watching this film as a one-off as to what the Infinity Stones are. And you do see shots of like the ether and stuff like that, and we see like little shots of like how it can be wielded and how it can like wipe out planets.
I liked how this film handles exposition by literally telling you stuff, but it doesn't feel like pushed.
They've got to be told. They've not seen them, and he stole an orb. He didn't steal an Infinity Stone. It happened to have an Infinity Stone. He stole some precious gem, and inside happened to be this thing. And he's got to be told what it is. This is the first in a sort of sub-franchise. So you get people going to see this who like Star Wars and haven't really thought about Marvel. So you've got to explain it, but they haven't explained to them at the same time. And it's explained in a minute or two. Doesn't take very long. I mean, it's far clunkier in like Infinity War than it is here. This isn't too bad at all.
Yeah. But even like in terms of like the characters, when they get arrested, you're gonna get like a brief introduction about who they are. I think it's like quite well structured. It's like, okay, well, obviously that's quite well done. You know, it doesn't. So this is Rocket and his best mate Groot.
He looks like a raccoon, but he isn't.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So what's the key point here? We know there's an Infinity Stone now, and Drax basically summons Ronan, doesn't he?
Basically, yeah, 'cause he's getting impatient. He's like, I want Ronan.
He just wants immediate revenge.
Yeah. So
this leads to a whole action sequence where he has his ass handed to him by Ronan, and while the others are sort of fleeing, Gamora's ship is destroyed, isn't it?
Mm. And Peter goes out and saves her, doesn't he, by just going out in space and taking off his helmet and letting her breathe, by theoretically sacrificing himself, but it doesn't quite. I mean,
no, he's called Yondu because Yondu's got a bounty on him, so he knows he's about to die. So he puts a call out to Yondu and says, "These are my coordinates. Come and get me." Yeah,
which is he got there quite quick, didn't he? Considering like you're in immediate space and you're not frozen to death.
He could have been having dinner or anything, couldn't he? It's kind of grim, that lot, because they talk about like he had to stop the rest eating him and things like that.
Yeah.
So they're saved, but they're now with they're now with Yondu. I don't know what his race is.
It is from Centauri 4, apparently, but I'm not quite sure what he is. He's a Ravager of some kind.
Yeah.
But I think he's one of the
Ravager,
original lineup.
Yeah, so those two are on that ship. Rocket, Drax and Groot are elsewhere and just basically come to try to get them out. And that's all leading to pretty good dialogue. They're basically going to start fighting, but long story short, they don't. And we end up with them all sort of sat around trying to work out a plan towards the sort of final act of the film. It's so tight. But there was a bit of a repetition of a joke, because there was a joke in the Avengers about Tony giving Pepper 12% of the credit for the building.
Oh yeah, 12%.
Yeah, here Peter's got 12% of a plan. 12% seems to be a thing.
Yeah, wasn't that also in the latest Avengers one as well? Like sort of something about percentage of like. Maybe I'm thinking too much. Anyway, so basically he encourages or he persuades him like, look, okay, well I haven't got the orb, so work my plan.
It's been stolen by Ronan in all of this, and he's now got an Infinity Stone that he basically calls Thanos up on the wall screen and says, "Fuck you, I'm having it."
Yeah.
He seems to be able to wield it, and he just sort of puts it into his staff or whatever it is.
His hammer.
Like a big hammer, really. Yeah. But it's like a full length hammer. It's the length of a staff, but it's a hammer. Yeah. So they've now got an Infinity Stone that if he's going to head to Xandar with that to destroy it for some reason. Are we sure we know why Ronan wants to destroy Xandar?
I think Ronan wants to basically destroy everything. Like he's and
he'll start with Xandar because the Nova.
Yeah, I think the closest thing I could put is he's kind of like Islamic extremist, where he just wants to like it's either everything's like his race or his rule or nothing. So it's just like I'm going to destroy everything that's not like.
But he would head to Xandar first because that's where the sort of effectively the lawyer for the sector is.
Yeah,
you wipe
presumably.
out the Nova or you wipe out everyone.
Yeah.
Okay, so they've now got to put together a plan with Yondu and with the 5 of them, to go and stop this happening. And they make it very clear, and it's shown in the little graphic when the Infinity War's shown to them, that if he touches the ground with it, it will wipe it out. So pretty straightforward in its stakes, isn't it?
Yeah. It's like, we're going to, he basically is going to destroy the galaxy with it. He's going to wield it as a weapon. So this way, you have the unity stand with the team, say, look, it's now or never, we've got to stand together, we might as well do something about it now, because we're not going to have a galaxy to live in if we just let him win this thing.
Lots of brilliant dialogue here as well,
Yeah.
particularly with Drax. Where he's not listening half the time and stuff like that. And, again, I wish I had a better memory for specific examples, but they all agree something, and then he immediately says something else, and it's like, well, I've just said that when literally just now. I wasn't listening. I was thinking of something else.
It's that, and plus like just the random things that he finds funny that he really shouldn't.
Yeah, we get more of that in the second one, actually.
Yeah.
Him laughing his ass off at stuff. It's really great. So we've now got Xandar's got the orb. Sorry, not Xandar. They're going to Xandar. Ronan has got the orb. Nebula is trying to sort of steal it back for her father, and the Guardians are kind of trying to steal it back to stop Xandar being destroyed. That's basically the stakes. And they do get in touch with the Nova Corps and basically tell them what's happening. So Peter Serafinowicz, I hate that a-hole line.
What a
Yeah, it's a bit.
No, I don't like it because either swear or choose another word. Because no one in life, anyone calls anyone an a-hole, do they?
No, not really.
Does that actually happen in life? You call them an asshole, or you pick a clean alternative. Or do a red dwarf and pick another word. Call them a smeghead or something.
Smeghead, yeah, Shmurr.
I mean, I suppose you've got a bit more license if you are talking about in the galaxy, but then they probably wouldn't even say a-hole,
Everyone
would they?
laughed at it. The trouble is he delivers it very straight because he's playing a very straight character. Deliberately, because Peter Serafinowicz is a brilliant comedy actor. For anyone who's never watched any of his stuff,
So funny.
look at stuff like Look Around You and stuff like that. He's
So
really
clever.
very, very talented. Anyone listening, if you don't recognise the name, he was the voice of Darth Maul in The Phantom Menace, but again, he was cut down to a couple of lines.
He's also in the hilarious film Spy, so I urge you to check that out as well.
Yeah, he's done a lot of things. He's very well known on British television as well, and
He's in Shaun of the Dead as Sean's boss.
he's in Shaun of the Dead as Sean's roommate
And yeah,
and boss. Yeah, I think he's the boss as well. So yeah, he's appeared in loads of stuff, but best known as a voice actor. He appeared in things like Black Books as well. So when I say anything about the way a comedy line's delivered here, it's purely out of the character. That it's delivered very, very straight, and a-hole's just not funny. But then I might be in a minority because I saw this theatrically a couple of times and everyone laughed.
Yeah.
I think because it's obviously like, I was going to say, what came up in my head is like, because it's a British actor saying an American line. And that sounds, I don't mean that to sound racist in any way, shape or form, but it's because it's probably a term that, yeah, we would say like asshole, for example. It's not something that we would say, or that we kind of, use in our vernacular. But that's what I meant. I was not being,
Yeah, we're British. We're gentlemen.
I don't mean like anti-American sentiment. I don't mean that
people
asshole.
like wankers. And...
I guess because he's quite a reserved guy, it's more about how he would kind of self-censor himself to a degree when he was cursing. I imagine, you can't imagine him sort of saying something like asshole or what a dick, because that just doesn't match. I don't know. But
yeah, I'm making too much of a tiny line, but I never found it that funny. That's all. But they're a very sort of straight, very regimented society or group anyway, the Nova Corps, and they've just take a risk that what Quill's saying is correct, and get themselves ready to defend Xandar. And I'm going to struggle from here on because I fucking hate everything that comes afterwards. I'm really bored by 99% of it.
Why do you hate it? What's the
any time we're sort of close in on the actors, and I actually mean the digital sprites as well. I mean Groot and Rocket, but every time we're close in on them and they're talking and they're interacting and they're planning, all of that works really well. Every time we're sort of outside of a craft just watching action, I'm finding that really boring, and it does go on a little bit too long. The film doesn't in general, but I think it's just me. I just think action has to be blindingly good and almost linked an umbilical level to the actual plot of the film for me to be interested. And at this point, I wasn't that interested in Xandar. I wasn't that interested in the Nova Corps particularly. The couple of jokes they did fell really flat, and I didn't care. But every time we were on the crafting close in on our core cast, that stuff was very good and better than I remembered. But yeah, it's one of the things Guardians does better. Guardians 2 has a better and more earned third act to me.
Yeah, definitely, because it's a lot more personal, isn't it? A lot more kind of centered around the characters. Do you feel that way generally about other non-Marvel films when they do big space battle type things, or do you feel like when it...
It depends what it is, because you think of something like Return of the Jedi, the space battle at the end of that's brilliant. I don't think you can only generalize about me by the weight of the number of shows we've discussed where I've said this sort of stuff. So I've clearly got a third act problem, full stop, when it descends into action. But there's plenty of series and films where there's a lot of action, and I've been very positive. And I think whatever the relative merits of the two Guardians films, I thought Guardians 2, from memory, and I'll reassess this time, did it right. And when we finish this, spoiler alert, folks, because we've decided what we're going to do absolutely next, and it isn't what we were going to do next. When we finish this series, we're going to cover Mission Impossible, and they're action heavy as hell, and I love them, or I love half of them anyway. So I think a lot of it is most of it's in execution, but I think my bar is a lot higher than most people's. I think you've really got to impress me for this stuff to work. Yeah. And so many of the Marvel films, I'm just like, I don't give a shit. I mean, even something like The Winter Soldier, which had a really good third act, I found myself tuning out a bit. You know what I mean? In places, and that's a film I really, really like. So yeah, I've got a problem with this stuff. But when we were talking in previous series about, many times through many episodes, about third acts and my problems, and I said we're going to have this problem when we get to Marvel. Every time I said that, the image in my head was Guardians of the Galaxy and them firing up from the ground in Xandar. So this is the poster boy for third act problems.
I think it's probably a cinematic problem where they always need to have a big climax, like end on your biggest, grandest action scene. Whereas I do wonder whether it actually matters, generally speaking, to wide audience. I think if you actually ended on a lot more smaller scale, but had your larger scene somewhere in the middle, like your main action scene.
Had you done it as you could have done a heist on that fucking ship, and that would have been good enough. You didn't need all the fucking bollocks outside it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because every time we're on the main characters, it's great. And there's still plenty of humour as well, like fucking, Groot clearing the fucking corridor of everyone and stuff like that. He just stretches his limbs out and smashes them against the wall. All of that stuff's really good, and I just properly cut action is quite good, because when you cut between different things, I'm going, great, let's see what's happening there. And then almost instinctively you're thinking, I wonder what happens there, and we cut to something else and we see it. Here, every time they cut away from the core characters, I was like, oh, fuck off. And then it would go back to them, and I'd be like, right, I'm interested again for a minute. It's a problem. It's not going to affect the final ranking. Well, it will, in that I can write off a lot of the third act of this film, but it's still extremely tightly plotted as a film.
Yeah.
This is the logical extension of everything they've done to get here, and it's not that badly executed. But for a film I've enjoyed so much, this was probably the worst third act since Iron Man, or possibly Thor.
So it's basically when you take away from the characters, so it just feels like, okay, I want to get back to the characters rather than.
Yeah, that's what it is. And actually, what I'd forgotten, because I hadn't seen Guardians for a while, is I'd forgotten all that character stuff was there. I mean, obviously I knew it was there because we finished with the We Are Groot bit and stuff, which is really terrific. But I remembered, and in talking through all those other series, when I said, I can't wait to do Marvel, but we're going to have a problem with third acts in that series because it's got loads of this where it just descends into action and I don't care. The example in my mind was always the first Guardians of the Galaxy, which is funny because it's one of the better films in the series overall. Having rewatched it today, there's a lot more of cutting towards that character work than I'd remembered. So it's not as bad as I remembered. But yeah, it is a problem. I don't give a shit about people I don't know firing up at a craft I don't know.
Yeah. But so basically, what happened is what do you call what are they called? The Zandarians.
Zandarians, that's the one.
They come along and do this like weird kind of netting thing with their ships, kind of like to block Ronan.
Do you know? It's just occurred to me that it's very good that when the Nova Corps arrested them, they put them on an off-site planet. Otherwise, Groot, if they'd had a prison on the planet, Groot would have been in a Xander cage.
But drum roll, please.
It's all right. Well earned.
Drum roll, please.
Yeah, I'm not that proud of it. A, because it wasn't that funny, and B, it was a fucking torturous setup. I had to say way more shit to get to the line than I thought.
Oh, that's got to be in the trailer.
Yeah. Great, everyone will rush to fucking listen then, won't they?
Yeah, so and that's one of the things I did worry because, I did kind of go a bit, oh, that's annoying, with Peter Serafinowicz' character kind of goes along protesting and saying like, I hope you prove me wrong, and he dies before he gets to sort of see that they won the fight. It was one of those things kind of almost like makes me feel a bit sad, a bit annoyed that I wish he'd lived just to have that.
It's cheap. I think I had a problem with that as well because it's cheap. I don't care. I don't care about this character. We've had a minute or two of him. He's had no chemistry with anyone by definition. And then he dies. And it's like, well, that was meant to be a heartfelt moment, was it? I don't care.
There's no setup
Get back
for that.
to the main characters.
Yeah. Anyway, so...
But then we do have the... we have lots of different bits going on, with Gamora and Nebula and all the rest of it. But in the end, we end up with Groot. They bring the ship down, and Groot basically envelops everyone to shield them, knowing he's going to die. And Rocket knows he's going to die doing this, and that's all terrific. So they survive an incredibly powerful crash.
Yeah.
And the Guardians and then it's the Guardians versus Ronan 2. Operation Miami Beach.
Colon 2 Operation.
Yeah, he said it best when he said nothing at all.
Yeah. So yeah, he's about to like twat the ground.
Yes.
And Quill decides to dance.
That's so funny. That bit actually laugh out loud funny, and I remember seeing that at the cinema. And I was that annoying person who actually laughed out loud.
You know, the best thing about it is there is a song playing. There is a song playing. And if he had to pick a song to dance to, it wouldn't be that one. So he's having to massively over-dance to quite a slow song. Which is the best thing about it. So he's giving it fucked quite a slow song.
I mean,
he's doing the best he can.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and again, I think there's some payoff in the second film to this because he distracts him and they manage to get the hammer destroyed and grab the stone. And Quill grabs it and it should destroy him. It destroys somebody at the start of the film who tries to grab it from Ronan. And it doesn't. And again, I think that's basically because he's not a pure Earthling. But we don't know that at this point.
No. I mean, he's kind of sold.
It'll kill him, but it'll kill him slower. That's all.
Yeah.
It's killing him slowly, but then when they all sort of join hands to share it, they can use that power. He manages to harness it and throw it at Ronan, basically.
With the power of love.
Yeah.
A song not on the soundtrack.
Yeah.
No, it should be though.
But you have
which version?
Well, which song? Because there's various songs.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Do you mean Frankie Goes to Hollywood? Do you mean Jennifer Rush?
Oh, Frankie Goes to Hollywood.
Fair enough.
But yeah, you also have that intake with him, like sort of replaying the time where his mum reached out for him, and it's so it's kind of like something that he's actually finally accepting that to a degree. So yeah, it all ties up, I think. So then he's do the whole with regards to the galaxy bitch or I don't know if he says bitch, I can't remember, but it feels like
gotcha, suckers. They should put that in every film, even Rain Man. I'll come and see Raymond. Gotcha, suckers.
I'm Rain Man, bitch.
End. Gotcha.
Rain Man, bitch.
Rohan.
dear.
We could totally commentate on Rain Man.
Oh,
With him having that attitude.
inappropriate.
What?
No, it would be funny.
Exactly.
Autism, not like anal cancer or something. No one knows about it.
Okay.
So, where do we go from here? It's just sort of tying up all the loose ends now.
Yeah.
Yondu basically gets the container, although when he opens it, there's not an orb in there.
It's a little
and he
troll.
smiles, which is again, he's been trolled, so that's a bit meta. Which I've only just
A bit
realised.
trolling going on there, I think.
But also, there's a little sort of hint that Yondu's not that bad because he smiles.
Yeah,
The
there's hints that he is actually secretly more affectionate,
Yeah, he's kind of on the right
or
side,
at the
isn't
very least,
and he's impressed.
or at the very it's like impressed, and maybe at the very least that he actually probably enjoys the chase more than there was an element of that maybe.
That's my boy. Yeah. The real stone goes under the protection of the Nova Core, so we know at this point where that Infinity Stone is. And when we get to, I'll remind you when we get to Infinity Stone, listeners, if those of you don't know, but it's the Power Stone.
Yeah.
So this all gets dealt with off camera, unfortunately, but they've got it now. What else? They're given a new ship by John C. Reilly on behalf of the Nova Corps as a thank you, because he's basically saved them all and saved his family, because he's got a wife and daughter as well.
Very nice ship it is,
They've
too.
had their criminal records wiped.
They basically start with a clean slate, don't they?
And they're giving the moniker of Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yeah. Bitch.
The title of the film is said not once, but twice.
And Peter finally accepts and opens up his present from his mum, which is another cassette tape.
Awesome Mix Volume 2,
Yeah.
Awesome Mix, yeah, Volume 2.
which would be perfect for a sequel.
Yes, amazingly enough.
Yeah, and then they sort of fly off, and basically they've got a little kind of offcut of Groot.
Yes, that's dancing to Michael Jackson. Or Jackson 5.
The two post-credit sequence, the first one is Howard the Duck,
Yes.
as with the Collector, and the second one is, I think it's that way round. The second one is Baby Groot, kind of as a little sort of sapling in a pot, starting to sort of become sentient and start to dance to "I Want You Back" by the Jackson 5.
Yeah, I think at the end of that film, everybody in the country wanted a dancing Groot. And I think it took them probably 6 months to a year to actually release, a similar toy. Everyone was
Still don't have one. I've got to get on that.
I think it's on my wish list for years and years and years. But yeah, like everybody in the country, I remember going through Twitter and being like, we all want a dancing Groot.
Listeners,
And I think they finally relented and made one.
Listen as I search live on the show for a dancing Groot on Amazon.com.
I mean, to be honest,
UK.
they should have done it for that Christmas. Because, I think,
They should have done. They should have known, they should have preempted the
strike
demand.
wide up. Yeah, I mean, I could see as soon as the film came out, it's like, well, you got time to make and develop one. You can just fucking have it in this
There's a
shelves by
Funko
Christmas.
Pop bubble. There's a Funko Pop version as well.
Yeah, so...
Yeah, they're about 20 quid. They're not too bad, actually.
But they're basically about them, like, sunflower things you used to get. Just used to dance to the radio, remember them?
Yeah.
Exactly the same thing.
Yeah, they were good fun, weren't they, years ago? In the 80s and 90s.
It weren't that fun, but yeah.
Well, no, but I remember, I think my...
Back in our day.
At a junk sale or
It's like
something.
that fucking fish thing on the wall. It's like...
Billy Bay.
David Brent thought it was funny. That was it.
Billy Bats.
Yeah, okay.
We can get those little things now that kind of move around, like they're solar powered, aren't they? They just kind of sit on your windowsill and bob around.
That's 3 Office references in 2 episodes. And one of them being the American Office. Don't know what's...
We need to do another Office show.
Final thoughts, folks.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's pretty solidly written. The only thing apart from the end that I would consider changing around is I always much preferred the idea of swapping around the Groot sacrificing himself and then uniting and destroying Ronan, flipping the other way around, and have that be the thing that brings down the ship. I thought that would have been a much better way of doing it, because you would have had Groot involved in the Guardians dynamic. It just felt a little bit like, oh well, they're missing. I don't know, but that's just a thought. But anyway, yeah, Guardians.
Yeah, then they could have said we're the Guardians of the Galaxy,
Yeah.
and we've got wood, bitch.
Yes.
Missed opportunity there.
It wrote itself. Anyway, yeah. So
All the quality filth I come out with for film scripts normally, I'd be writing quite a lot of cheesy shit here by the look of it.
Dave, you need to write that film.
Yeah, it's almost Carry On standard, but never mind.
Carry on, Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yeah.
So to crack on, it's very very tightly, very well constructed, very well made. It's very enjoyable, very funny. I was actually quite surprised how well it actually holds up and how well it stands when you analyze it. Well, not everything, but most things have a payoff, and that's not something you see, sadly.
Yes, I massively enjoyed this film. It's not perfect, as we said. The third act leaves a bit more to be desired and could be worded a little bit better and ordered a little bit better. But yeah, no, really strong performances. A cast that you didn't really expect to see in a film together all appear here for sure. And that's kind of befitting like the ragtag nature of the bunch. But yeah, as I say, there was a lot riding on this property being like a relatively unknown property in the Marvel universe, and I think the gamble really paid off. I think for that year it was the highest grossing film at the box office for 2014, I think. If not, I'll go and check on boxofficemojo.com and have a little look.
I would be very surprised if it was for that year, but it might have been at the North American box office. I don't know.
Yeah, North American box office in terms of like the
worldwide it did 773 million. That doesn't sound like
no, it's not massive.
That's not an overall topper, although that's great for first time out.
In terms of like of a debut, and Marvel films for that year, for example.
Yeah, absolutely.
I really enjoyed this film. Had a good time with it. Really hyped for the sequel for sure.
To the highest grossing film at the worldwide box office this year was unfortunately Transformers: Age of Extinction.
That's what I think of that.
It's fucking rubbish.
Although I heard Bumblebee is quite good.
So have I. Yeah, I've heard that.
I might actually go and check that one out.
Michael Bay's nowhere fucking near it. That might be why.
Yeah. It looks like something that has a genuine heart and soul. So.
Yeah. Whereas Age of Extinction was a film that I'm used to films being 20 minutes too long. I'm not used to films being over an hour too long. The film fucking ends and then they throw on another hour because of Chinese funding. It's fucking awful.
Oh.
And it's full of like statutory rape jokes and stuff. It's just tasteless and awful.
Is that the
Kelsey Grammer and Stanley Tucci are pretty good in it.
Oh, okay, that's the thing. I can't remember much about that one.
Yeah, I've only seen two of them. The only reason I saw that one was a friend was off sick and just wanted to get out to the cinema and for something to do.
Yeah.
He wanted to see it, so I said, yeah, absolutely. He wanted company, and I would again. Obviously, go and see something for a friend. That's absolutely fine, but it wasn't good. But yeah, I'm looking from the top down on Box Office Mojo. Basically, I've gone from Avatar down and stopped at the first one that says year of release 2014, and it's Transformers: Age of Extinction. So yeah, it might have been at the North American box office, of course, because Transformers films tend to do most of their money overseas. So that Transformers only did 245 million at the US box office, which isn't massive for a yearly topper anyway. So, the Hobbit is the next one I could see, and that did 255. And then the next one I can see with 2014 next to it. My eyes could easily skip over one, by the way, but this very unscientific quick rundown is Guardians of the Galaxy, and that did 333 at the US box office. So I think that's what you're referring to. It's the highest grossing at the US box office that year.
Yeah, that's what I meant, sorry, in terms of the US box office. Excuse my squeaky chair, by the way.
That's not that massive, to be fair, but yeah, okay. Obviously not a massive year in terms of grosses. Oh, no, actually, looking down a few further, Hunger Games Mockingjay.
Oh, yeah, of course, Mockingjay, that would
did a little bit more, like 4 million more at the box office in America, but less overall. But yeah, it was one of the better performers.
One of the highest gross.
Yeah, no, it's all right. It's not in your fun facts, so you're allowed to fuck this bit up.
No, it's not.
Fun facts are obviously things people rely on.
Like, I figured Dave, you would talk about the box office, so, Yeah.
Okay, so, yeah. By and large, though, really, really positive about it, Becca.
Yes, by and large, it's a thumbs up from me.
Yeah, and it's a thumbs up from me as well. I mean, the thing with it is that we've got through it very, very quickly. And that's really actually a sign of how tight it is, because you talk about a scene and the relevant information in that scene got across to us very quickly and very easily. And it's quite a tight film with a very light structure to it. Even the things I've complained about, I mean, Act 3 is still a very logical extension of everything that came before. That we were set up that they needed to go and do all this. We were set up that they would go and talk to the Nova Corps and all of the rest of it. The problem is that if it's real life, you care because it's real people and you've got normal human compassion. But when you're trying to save an indeterminate number of people who don't exist and we have no names of, it doesn't really matter to me too much. But it's all structured really well. It all sounds very good. The casting is just absolutely perfect. Everybody is great in their roles. People I didn't think would work, like Batista, works great, and now I'm happy to watch him in anything, to be fair.
Almost wasted in Spectre, wasn't he, really?
Yeah, he was. But even his opening scene in Blade Runner was great. It's like a really small performance as an older man. I think he will continue to have a decent career ahead. I would hope, anyway. You put a talking raccoon in it. How well is that going to work? Well, he's really funny. I Am Groot, is that going to work? It works. All of it works, and they have great chemistry between them, even though some of the actors are acting opposite things that aren't even there. So, very, very high note for me. The sad thing is that we got to the end of this year, and I thought, Christ, Marvel will nail this now. I can't wait to see Age of Ultron, because they've really, But never mind.
What can go wrong?
What could possibly go wrong? You've got Whedon back, and they're coming off their strongest year ever. They're going to go from strength to strength. As a studio, they sort of have, but this is the second half of a very, very special year, and I will rank this film, third act problems aside, accordingly.
I would agree.
But I'm feeling like I don't have that much knowledge on it, Dave.
Yeah, that's probably why we didn't talk for very long, because it was like, what do you think?
We're just ill-informed, shall we say?
We were ill-informed. I think the problem is now we're building towards, the end of Phase 2. I think people expect us to be experts, Chris. This isn't good enough.
Yeah. But
Becca, can you help?
No.
Good night, folks.
I sort of feel that we're missing obviously the soundtrack for this film is a huge part of it, and I feel like we need to get Charlie on. But I'm sure we'll cover that soon.
Well, a bit late now.
No, but when we come to do a future music episode, I'm sure we'll get his input on the series as a whole.
Yeah, absolutely. Bear in mind, he's much more sort of a score man than a soundtrack.
Oh, of course, yeah, no, definitely.
This is a selection of songs. Yes, it does have a score as well, but when anyone thinks of this film, they think of the songs.
They're going to think of 10cc and Jackson 5 and etc. etc.
Absolutely.
But yes, I've got a selection of fun facts about this film.
Excellent.
Fun fact number 1, Dave Bautista underwent 5 hours of makeup each day of his shoot to apply all the prosthetic tattoos and marks all over his body.
To the degree that I was stunned when I actually saw him out of makeup. I had no idea he was that ethnicity and that eye colour. He didn't look in real life anything like I expected him to.
He looks completely different.
The head was the right shape, but that's not what I thought Dave Bautista looked like.
And then you obviously see him in Inspector, and you're like, oh.
Yeah.
And I think his character originally was kind of more green, but obviously we've got Gamora, who is green, and also we've got in the universe we've got the Hulk as well. So I think they tried to make him like they
altered the colour palette of it.
Altered the colour palette of his character. I was trying to think of a way to say that. To make Gamora stand out more, and so we didn't get confused with characters like as the Hulk, for example. So fun fact, obviously at the beginning of the film we see him listening to music via Walkman. The Sony TPS-L2 was the first Walkman to be released by Sony in 1979. They originally called the Soundabout in America and then the Stowaway over here in the UK, but obviously it's quite expensive to market items with various names across the globe. So they decided to stick to the Walkman. This could have been a reference to the Pressman, which is like a mono cassette recorder, that was first released. I think I had a Walkman at one point. It was good fun.
Yeah.
Bit of personal insight there, listeners.
I remember having one. I think it was bright purple, and I had bright green buttons.
That sounds fucking awful.
It was the 90s, you know.
The days of taping off the radio and taping off your CD
Yeah,
players.
classic.
Oh, I mean,
The radio on the top 10 off the radio. Wow.
Yeah, the good old days where you went out with 8 fucking songs on you. Yeah, brilliant.
It's like now you can just like look at your phone and play literally anything.
I am so not the good old days when I was a kid. It was fucking boring and bollocks.
Or for me, you've got my little nano third generation of 8 gig, so but all I listen to is podcasts these days anyway, so
Yeah, me too.
I tend not to listen to so much on my phone, even though I probably could. I'm still like, I can't bear to leave my old technology behind. But
Facts that are fun and followed by personal experience and insights.
I'm making a mixtape, an awesome mix. You know, if you're when I was at school, you know, if you're in love with somebody, you make them a mixtape. There's a way to say, I like you. So
yeah, I mean, you can't really make them like a playlist.
You can't really make
now.
a mix CD. Well, you can, but it's a bit different now.
You can't really
make somebody a playlist.
You can't make them a playlist on Spotify and go, there you go.
No, that takes the magic out of it.
Hand of Love won the service to Spotify. I love you.
It's something that's kind of this generation won't. You know, I'm sure there's another way of doing it, but yeah, you know, you're old when.
Yeah, you know you're old when you start saying, you know you're old when.
And when you're and when you're old, when you start getting like so misty-eyed that you get nostalgic over utter shit.
Yeah.
Right, continue, Becca.
Well, I don't
in my day.
I know.
Yeah. Remember when we had 3 channels and there was fuck all on them? Carry on.
Well, Channel 5 came about in our lifetime.
Channel 4 came around in mine.
Yeah.
And Chris's, technically, just about. But even then, that just brought, countdown.
Mid-80s, and then Channel 5 again in 1999, 2000 in there somewhere, so.
97 it launched.
It was of course it was 97, wasn't it? Yeah. Anyway, fun fact number 3. James Gunn brother Sean provided the on-set acting for the role of Rocket. So it's quite interesting, I think. And there was a short actor as well to do the in between puts. So the actual role of Rocket Raccoon is played by 3 actors. Fun fact number 4. I would need to check on this. But during my
doesn't
online
sound like
research,
a fact, then, does it, Becca?
I'm sceptical, Chris.
Okay, go on.
But yeah, it's off a fan site, so I'm not quite sure. Film Soundtrack was the first film soundtrack.
No, that's definitely not true. There's loads of film soundtracks before this one.
To actually make it to the top of the US Billboard charts, despite not having, it was literally, despite not having like one original song on there. But I'm not quite sure how true that is. So, fun, but may not be a fact.
This is the only time I've ever wished this was a video podcast so that our listeners could see how sceptical I'm looking right now.
I'm doing a Roger Moore eyebrow raise. So my final fun fact, number 5. The original 1969 Guardians of the Galaxy lineup are...
Rocky
and Gamora and... Oh, no,
Marcellus Wallace. Riddick Bowe. The Force Ghost of Ronnie Corbett. Sorry, go on.
Don't forget the Queen. Oh dear. Major Vance Astro from Earth. Martin X Naga from Pluto. Captain Charlie 27 from Jupiter. And Yondu Udonta from Centauri 4. And then obviously we see them in an alternate lineup in the sequel. So yeah, that's my 4.5 fun facts.
Chris, did you immortalise that in recording for our listeners?
It is immortalised forever.
Yeah, because I thought we'd lost Chris then, and I thought we can't lose this, it's gold.
No, I'm still here, don't worry.
Not only that, that's fun, folks.
That's so fun.
It was a very authoritative till we got to fact 4, and then I sensed terrible self-doubt. Or was it 5? Whichever one you got confused.
But it was the last one, wasn't it?
Yeah. I lost track. I was too busy assimilating the information.
You were too busy like reminiscing about your Walkman.
That's what it was. I was getting nostalgic for the good old days where you could get live from Her Majesty's with fucking Jimmy Tarbuck on a Sunday night. Fucking hell. Watch Tommy Cooper have a heart attack.
It was a lot simpler than having like 3 or 4 channels, though, wasn't it? You didn't have to like.
It's simpler, but the problem is everything has to be aimed at everyone. So you get like a variety show, and the problem with the variety show is, firstly, it's got to be family friendly. So you get like a fucking comedian, but it's like Billy Pierce or something, right? And then he walks off, and it's
I don't even know who Billy Pierce is.
Just a shit 80s comic.
Did he have a mullet?
Think Joe Pasquale, anything like that, right? But Joe Pasquale, I nearly said Joe Pasquale, but he's way too talented to be Billy Pierce, right?
He's more memorable.
Yeah. So and then they'd have some singer, and then they go to a commercial break, and when they come back, it's a juggler, and it's like, who's this fucking aimed at?
The irony is, though, in the day and age where we can literally access anything we want, really. Like, you got all the channels in the world, we still flip, go, no.
Yeah, literally, you're flicking through all the channels.
Even on fucking Netflix, right? You got a selection of all these films, all these TV shows, a variety of all different genres, anything that could make anyone happy, and we still flip through and go, I'm not sure what to watch, I can't make my mind up. You spend like good...
I want to know that I can watch literally tens of thousands of things before I quit and decide to watch I'm Alan Partridge again.
And God bless Dave for that, eh?
No, it's on Netflix. I think you meant the channel, Dave. Yeah. Yes. Shares in me are not as popular.
Gone are the days with Friends repeats on E4.
Okay.
No, that's on Netflix as well.
Not for much longer.
That hasn't aged well.
That's another thing I'm just not watching, but it's there if I wanted to, which gives me great comfort.
Should you feel the need, before it disappears off Netflix, it's there.
Social media, folks.
You can follow me on Simulatronics, even though I don't barely tweet anyway. And you can find this podcast and all the backlog of episodes on simulatronics.co.uk.
He might not tweet very often, but occasionally I see that he's liked a tweet, and so that's something for you to enjoy, listeners. Yeah, so you can see where Chris likes when someone had a nice day.
That's like more when I like go that when I'm scrolling and I've like accidentally pressed a like, and it's like I can't be asked to redo it. So.
Yeah. It never used to appear in feeds. I do feel sorry for people who like, some fucking really like porny fucking one, and then it comes up in your feed that they liked it.
Yeah, I get that a lot. I think I had to mute somebody, and I was like, sorry.
You can find me at the Pasty Kid 1976 on Twitter.
You can find us on Twitter at Expect Us to Talk. You can drop us an email if you like, expectustotalk@gmail.com. We're on Facebook.com. Also, if you search Do You Expect Us to Talk? We're also on YouTube. If you head over to YouTube and type in Do You Expect Us to Talk? And as Chris said, you can also find this amazing podcast on iTunes. If you type in Do You Expect Us to Talk? Also, if you're a listener already, if you like what you hear, please kindly bestow upon us a glowing 5-star review. Helps us to rank higher in the listings and attract more lovely listeners. For the note, and also for the time being, we are still not on.
You're just going to go and name every app you can think of we're not on now. We're not on the fucking AA or...
Not on Pinterest. Not on...
No.
Not on Instagram.
We're on the ones that matter.
We're still on Letterboxd, but I haven't
We're
quite
on the
deleted it
ones
just yet.
that, social media, and you can actually and the ones where you can access the actual show. We haven't got photos of our dinner anywhere or anything.
Maybe we should do that. Like when we all have dinner, just tweet a picture. This is what we're eating this evening.
This is the kind of creative input that we get.
I wonder if there's a general market for this. Like who would give a shit what I'm having for my day? Oh, Mackey's again.
Yeah.
Isn't that what Instagram was for?
Personally, I want to know if Jason Mantzoukas from How Did This Get Made has had any sort of meat-based pies recently.
I think we should tweet him and find out.
Well, we all know it'll be like what was it like that Blue Kitchen thing?
Yeah.
Blue Apron would be like much of that basically.
Oh yeah, because a lot of these places, a lot of these podcasts are actually like sponsored, aren't they? So it'll be like, yeah, okay.
Oh, unless they're called Dead Lying and they just like go, oh, I used to, it's delicious, and it's bollocks. They don't even bother doing it.
So we are about to come up towards the end of the last two entries in Phase 2 of Marvel, but we've got another break because we have an anniversary coming up, 40 years since the next film we're going to cover in our sort of sequential numbering anyway, which means, Becca.
Yes, Dave, that means, do you expect us to talk or return with our commentary of Superman, the movie?